Some years ago, one of our sons asked me why it wasn't a good idea to try alcohol or tobacco to see what it was like.
Okay, Dallin, let me jump in here real quick, because clearly we're about to be taken on a trip through the Folgers-free fantasy land of Mormon logic. If your child is getting curious, maybe take a moment to offer evidence-based guidance instead of teeing up some cringe-worthy mansplaining. Tobacco? No benefits. Totally agree. It's a garbage habit with absolutely no upside, just disease and death. But alcohol, well, that's a bit more nuanced, which I know isn't really your thing, but moderate wine consumption, especially red wine, has been shown in many studies to reduce cardiovascular disease, lower stress, and even help you live longer. But spoiler alert, Oakes is not interested in science because he's replaced facts with faith.
He knew about the word of wisdom, and he also knew the health effects of these substances, but he was questioning why he shouldn't just try them out for himself.
Only in Mormonism is it shocking that a teenager is using critical thinking and curiosity. Someone better call the Strength of the Youth pamphlet police. And let's not ignore the fact that moderation exists. Trying alcohol once in a safe setting doesn't launch you into a pit of liver failure by Tuesday. And if someone takes a single puff of a cigarette, they're not immediately checked into the hospital. Listen to me, Dallin, the word of wisdom is not a guide for health. It's a cultural identity test with arbitrary rules. Latter-day Saints don't drink coffee, but they'll slam a sugar-loaded energy drink at a BYU tailgating party with no issues. It's not about health, it's all about the control. And perhaps most important of all, it's based off of anti-scientific and outdated 19th century temperance movement speculations.
I replied that if he wanted to try something, he ought to go out in the barnyard and eat a little manure.
Well, that escalated quickly, didn't it? What is this, a conference talk or fear factor? This is literally one of the worst analogies I've ever heard, and I've been on ex-Mormon Reddit. Manure isn't just unpleasant, it's literally dangerous. There are zero health benefits to consuming human poop. Unlike alcohol, which has documented benefits in moderation, and unlike tobacco, which is at least a known substance that people use recreationally, manure is literally toxic waste. Comparing a fine Merlot to cow dung is not just intellectually lazy, it's embarrassingly juvenile. What kind of unhinged leap of logic are you using?
He recoiled in horror. "Ooh, that's gross," he reacted.
Yes, that's gross. Just like Dallin Oak's inability to form a coherent argument about the word of wisdom without falling into juvenile scare tactics. Also notice how he conveniently sticks to tobacco and alcohol here and avoids the much more indefensible bans on coffee and tea. And why do you suppose that is? It's because explaining to your kid that the Mormon Jesus gets offended by green tea requires even more mental gymnastics than this ridiculous barnyard analogy. But sure, let's pretend manure is the real enemy here.
"I'm glad you think so," I said, "but why don't you just try it out so you'll know for yourself?"
And here's where the analogy really goes off the rails. Because unlike alcohol, manure is not a recreational substance. It's not regulated. It's not aged in barrels or sipped in moderation with dinner. It's literally full of disgusting pathogens that can cause life-threatening illnesses. You know what doesn't kill you with one taste? A small glass of wine. You know, a Chardonnay is not going to send you to the ER. A sip of coffee isn't going to ruin your eternal soul. Honestly, Dallin, maybe stay in your lane, preferably one without cow pies in it.
While you're proposing to try one thing that you know is not good for you, why don't you apply that principle to some others?
This is the rhetorical equivalent of handing your kid a list that says, you eat a donut, you might as well start meth tomorrow. This is the kind of argument that ignores nuance, individual responsibility, and science. It's not a slippery slope. It's a greased water slide with false equivalency. One puff of a cigarette doesn't morally equate to mainlining manure, and pretending otherwise is just manipulative scaremongering dressed in patriarchal condescendence.
That illustration of the silliness of trying it out for yourself proved persuasive for one 16-year-old.
You know what else sounds like it was persuasive to a 16-year-old? This entire analogy, because that's the level of logic that we're working here with. Dallin's arguing that you shouldn't think for yourself because he's done the thinking for you. This kind of bankrupt reasoning isn't just silly, it's intellectually vapid. If the church's best defense of the word of wisdom is, would you eat poop? Maybe it's time to take the discussion out of the barnyard and into the real world.
Steve A's, his news roundup is becoming a significant problem.
More and more are tuning in. They're starting to question.
We need a strategy to counter this, and quickly.
I am inevitable.
Brothers, the Mormon news roundup is becoming a significant problem.
D-Vase's influence grows daily. What can we do to counter this?
You can't stop me.